Want to see an interesting place where Jesus again forecasts the new covenant, but it's hidden within this beautiful healing story, as well as the confusion and problems that the religious people of the day saw in it? Remember this story of the woman healed on the Sabbath day? Luke 13:10 says, "Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And behold, there was a woman who had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bent over and could in no way raise herself up. But when Jesus saw her, he called her to him and said, 'Woman, you are loosed from your infirmity. Woman, thou art loosed,' like T.D. Jakes says. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight and glorified God. But the ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. And he said to the crowd, 'There are 6 days on which men ought to work. Therefore, come and be healed on them, not on the Sabbath day.' The Lord answered him and said, 'You hypocrite! Doesn't each one of you on the Sabbath loose your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it away to water it? So ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound, think of it, for 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath?' And when he said these things, all his adversaries were put to shame, and all the multitude rejoiced for all the glorious things that were done by him." This is such a beautiful story. We see not only Jesus' healing power and his love and his compassion for the sick, but notice what he said. When he called her a daughter of Abraham, why would he say that? They knew she was another Jewish person. She was at the synagogue. They were at church. They must have known her. But he says, shouldn't this daughter of Abraham be healed? Now, there's an interesting aspect to Abraham that we see in the writings of Paul and others, and when Jesus brings it up. And it's important that we notice this. Remember when Paul brings up Abraham and how Abraham was justified by faith, right? And Abraham was obviously long before Moses and the law. And there's covenants that God made with Abraham that the law that came by Moses, that Moses' covenant didn't erase. That's a point of Paul saying that, a covenant that comes after doesn't change it if it's still going. But remember the law and the idea behind Abraham's promise, Abraham's faith. This was Abraham's covenant. When God saw Abraham, he was made righteous because of his faith. And that it was the faithful Abraham who received it not from works and promise. And that's Paul's idea in the New Testament about how Abraham and the Abrahamic covenant is different than the Moses covenant. And in this case, when he brings up this daughter of Abraham, notice what he's saying. He's not saying, look at this fellow daughter of Israel, not this daughter of Moses, not this other person in the law. He's hearkening back to Abraham, who by faith was able to receive, and it didn't have to do with works, and it was long before the Sabbath even existed. This Sabbath day, when it was put into the covenant, right? In the commandments, in the Mosaic covenant, this happened when Moses was there, right? And Abraham had his kid Isaac, Jacob, and those. So this was hundreds of years before. Hundreds of years before the Sabbath was some established part of the religious culture. Abraham was able to receive from God by faith because of a promise. So when he says, look at this daughter of Abraham should be loosed, he's hearkening back to something before the law, before the covenant, before these Sabbath ideas came. Because what if God would have said to Abraham, hey, you know what? I'm going to bless you, but let's wait a day because it's Saturday or something. That's crazy. So I want you to notice this and look for this in Scripture. When Abraham is brought up, remember these covenants that's on the minds of these Jewish people of Abraham. Now, there's some land ideas, and some of the covenants have stipulations where even with Abraham, if they continued in this, then they could have those promises. And some people think some of those promises are today, just like they think some of the old covenant is still going on today. But if God put a condition on, the condition better be met. But when it comes to faith and the promise, the condition is only on God to meet because he is faithful who has promised, and he will be sure to complete it. So sometimes we wonder, we go, hey, well, where's healing in this covenant? Where's healing in that one? Should not a daughter of Abraham or a son of Abraham be loosed because of the faith and because of the promise of healing? Whether or not you have an exact healing stipulation, you have this promise. And we remember that song, Father Abraham had many sons, I'm one of them, and so are you, left arm and all that crazy stuff, right? Notice this, your healing, your blessing, things of your covenant with God, that the new covenant mentions how faith is this new way, that faith and righteousness in your relationship with God is the new covenant way outside of the Mosaic covenant, outside of those works of the law, that in this same way, you, son or daughter of Abraham, can be healed and set free and whatever you need from the Lord that he has promised because of your faith. I love you and the Lord loves you. We'll see you next time.